those of you physically present, but also to our audience on the webcast. And they've told me to stand still as much as I can, not to hurt any camera angles, so I'll do my best. Right. So while you're here, this is a competition that opened last week. EUREKA Collaborative R&D, focusing specifically on photonics for advanced manufacturing, and we'll have a detailed look on what this means. I'm joined today by my colleagues from Innovate UK, Melissa and Lydia. So we're going to go through the competition's package, if you like, in terms of the technical scope, in terms of the eligibility, the application process, also the finances, the project setup, assessment. I'm going to conclude with the Q&A. So in terms of the scope, that goes first, a little bit of background on what drives this competition. So basically, Innovate UK has had a long-term, if you like, collaboration with funding agencies from the Photonics 21 Mirror Group, which is a specific forum of funding agencies in Europe and internationally. We get together and we discuss priorities amongst our countries. And throughout time, we have developed a keen interest on photonic technologies and innovations. And we've run projects together with those other funding agencies in areas like biophotonics, areas like telecommunications, civil security and safety, and so on. And that has happened historically through the FP7 and Horizon 2020 EUREKA, so-called EUREKA mechanisms. The most recent project that we run is called Photonic Sensing, and it's part of Horizon 2020. So having stretched, if you like, the possibilities that the EUREKA offered to us, we are now looking for new opportunities to extend that collaboration, and EUREKA provides a very good, if you like, vehicle to carry on this collaboration amongst those countries. So this is our first competition under EUREKA. We use EUREKA as a, if you like, as a platform to deliver this competition, and I'll explain a bit more in the next slide. So the focus is on photonics for advanced manufacturing, and I'll be kind of elaborating on what we mean by that. Participating countries, most importantly, including us, UK, is Austria, France, Germany, Israel, Poland, and Switzerland. So as you can see, includes one of the leading countries when it comes to photonics technologies and innovations. So I dare say we have the best of the best in this group. Now, I mentioned EUREKA, and for those of you that are not aware of it, although we're going to have a more detailed presentation later on, EUREKA is a network, effectively, of funding authorities and governments, can be ministries, that come together, they put forward investments, and they decide which priorities to invest on, pretty much. So that's in a nutshell. And that's what we did as part of this competition. So we teamed up with those countries that participate, and we are developing our interest around the photonics technologies and innovations. Now, EUREKA comes in different flavors. We are particularly utilizing the EUREKA Network projects, primarily because it allows us to be more flexible and autonomous on how we shape that collaboration. So it provides a very good vehicle, if you like, to allow that flexibility. And it can be better in terms of timing because UK has the UK chairmanship. The UK has the chairmanship of EUREKA, I'm sorry, for this year, ending this summer. And basically, this drives a whole new ambition, which comes with additional investments, including this one. Right. Photonics for advanced manufacturing is the very theme of this competition. The big picture, of course, is the manufacturing sector in the UK, which has a significant contribution. If you see the numbers there, the contribution that the sector has in the UK economy is roughly 10% of the overall GDP of this country. It accounts for 8% of the UK's total workforce. 44%, manufacturing is responsible for 44% of UK exports, but more importantly, it has a share of 70% or thereabout of the total R&D expenditure in the UK. And this sends a very clear message especially with the introduction of digital technologies that are shaping, if you like, the manufacturing space. So how new technologies, digital technologies, kind of transform the way that, that production becomes more flexible, both with the use of data and AI, and of course photonics, as we'll see in a minute. Now, if you take a slice of the manufacturing sector, the UK one, you can see the photonics contribution. By some accounts, it has roughly around 7% of the overall UK manufacturing sector's output, production-wise. That's coming from photonics. But UK has a very strong position globally as well. By some analysis, it has approximately 3 to 8% of the global photonics production as a whole. And if you focus specifically on the photonic components production, then the UK is number 8 at the global level, amongst the large manufacturers, and then number 4 at the European level. And again, this shows the strength that the UK industry has on the manufacturing front for photonics. And of course, if you look at the export numbers, 75% of those products made in the UK go elsewhere globally, and shows the attractiveness and the demand that those products have globally, if you like. Right. And then we focus on the advanced part. And if you look closer, advanced manufacturing can be different things to different people, of course. There are two kind of views if one distills the different, if you like, directions and viewpoints. So one is the view that says manufacturing is all about processes and techniques. So objective function, input, output, how we maximize that. But there's also the evolved view, enabled primarily by digital technologies that, as I said before, transform the whole manufacturing space. Manufacturers are no longer viewed as traditional producers of things. More importantly nowadays is how they manufacture their products. And this is where the advanced, if you like, dimension comes in. You can think of many examples, but the one I'd like to quote is you see the example of companies like Apple with the iPhone, that they have something like 40% of gross profit margins coming out of a single device, which is quite impressive. And if you think of it, it's that orchestration of the flexible manufacturing, plus no doubt the design and the marketing that makes them leading edge players in the industry. So just as an example of what can be advanced. But having said that, according to the old definition or the old view, industries that were not considered advanced in the old days, they of course nowadays becoming advanced. So any manufacturer that can have some kind of automation, if you like, and processes in place to be flexible and, for example, serve niche markets, that can be regarded advanced as well, right? So the notion has changed. That's the message. Now, when you look through the scope of this competition, and I'll come to that in a minute, there are two dimensions. Basically, the process dimension, which is basically the processes that enable the manufacturing of photonic technologies, can be a laser as an end output, end product, or a modulator, or so on, an optical fiber. And it's also the processes, the technologies, the very photonic technologies and systems that enable processes in other sectors, so other vertical sectors, like the automotive, as I say here, aerospace, or the semiconductor industry. So there are two dimensions there. And then the other dimension is the product one, which is basically how photonic technologies enable high-end products. And that can be, again, as an example, smartphones nowadays have a plethora of sensors on board. When you take the photonic element, that can be VCSELs or optical elements that enable the 3D scanning, for example, and imaging. Can be optical elements for the health monitoring, and so on. So that can be an example of where photonic enables products. A robotic vacuum cleaner in modern days can be another one in terms of having that awareness of the space to be able to move and clean. And of course, more exotic, if you like, products like a microsatellite. So there's quite a broad range. Now, looking specifically on the scope, we cover both the dimensions. So this is the product and the process as well. There's a top level, if you like, requirement in terms of focusing on those projects that aim to develop products. So there needs to be that near market, if you like, dimension there. And that can be anything from products to technology-based application, technology-based services, and so on. But more importantly, it must be clear in terms of the high market potential for Europe, but also beyond Europe, because we have countries that geographically, for example, Israel, goes beyond the European, if you like, notion of the geography. Now, the three must-haves, as you kind of look into the scope, are first of all to address at least one of the photonic technologies. We'll come back to that in a second. And at least one of the industry sectors. That's one must-have. The second must-have is to focus on those technologies and their integration into either processes or products, as I said before. And the third one is, of course, to demonstrate through your application the potential to, of course, improve those processes and all products. What we mean by photonic technologies and industry sectors, there's quite a broad range, and this is just given as examples, if you like, indicative examples. Can be more than that, depending on your idea. But to start with, photonic technologies can include things like process control, metrology of any kind, anything related to cutting, drilling, bonding, soldering at very small, very precise, if you like, dimensions or accuracies like millimeter scale, nanoscale, can include material processing, material depositioning. So it's quite broad. And then when it comes to industry sectors, again, we address a wide spectrum. Of course, automotive and aerospace is one, but we go beyond that in terms of materials, in terms of chemical and manufacturing industries, and so on, safety and quality engineering, and so on. So again, it's quite broad. But the most important thing is, given that you now have those two dimensions, process and product, it's important to get in touch with us once you have an idea of what you'll be developing in terms of a proposal, to get in touch with us in terms of checking the scope, that you fit the scope, but more importantly, to enable us to, if you like, fine-tune with the involved funding agencies, because there are many countries involved. We have different priorities. Some may be more interested in the process dimension. Some may be in the product dimension. Some in both. So it's important to let us know, and then that will help us align in terms of the scope, how you fit the scope. We have a matchmaking website specifically for this competition, which is hosted by EUREKA. And basically, what you can do is go online, register, fill in your details and your interests, and that gives you, if you like, an online forum to invite others in terms of, covering specific slots for expertise in your proposal and so on. So it enables that collaboration virtually, which can be useful. And then, as I said before, UK has a chairmanship for EUREKA. And what's coming up is our flagship event as part of the chairmanship on the 14th and 16th of May in Manchester. So this provides an additional opportunity for you to invite your potential collaborators in Manchester and basically discuss around your proposal, because you will have time in terms of the timeline. So May is this event, and then the closing will be 25th of July. So I'll come back to the timeline later. So two opportunities: matchmaking website and the EUREKA Global Innovation Summit. Now, a look into the eligibility criteria, having covered the scope, the big picture. What do you need as a minimum to get involved? You need at least one UK-based SME. SME goes by the EU definition of an SME. And the other thing is that you need at least one eligible partner from one of the 6 participating countries that you saw before. And you can see those listed here. So this is your minimum. At least one UK SME, at least one partner from the 6 participating countries, and then you're good to go. You can add as many collaborators as you like beyond that minimum, and that will depend on the scale and the ambition that you have as part of the idea. Sorry. There are some, if you like, additional conditions in the sense that no individual partner or collectively partners from a single country, so they cannot claim more than 75% of the total project. That's one condition, if you like. And then the other one is that the UK research organizations are capped at 30% of UK participation's total costs. So the UK industry, in a given, if you like, consortium, the UK industry claims minimum 70%, and the research organizations claim maximum 30%. And you can tune that depending on the level of the resourcing that goes with the idea and the proposal. When it comes to subcontracting, it is allowed. Yes, you can include subcontractors, but we need to see, if you like, the justification for why a subcontractor is involved and what's if you like, the item that it's covered uniquely, ideally, and there is a cap there of 20%. In terms of the project lead, and again, conditioned on the minimum 2 that I mentioned before, the UK SME that is, and at least one partner from the participating states. A UK business of any size can lead, that's fine. And then when it comes to research organizations, they cannot lead a proposal, but they can be partners on a proposal, given that the minimum conditions are satisfied. Project size, we are expecting, as part of this competition, to fund projects with a typical range, if you like, of 75k euros up to 2 million euros. So that's typical that we expect, and then they can go up to 3 years in terms of their duration, so not more than that. For those wondering whether other countries can participate, the answer is yes, but that goes with conditions. Of course, the competition is about those 7 countries, first and foremost. If other countries want to join, then they have to finance their own participation. That's one. Second is that they have to justify why they are involved, what they cover genuinely that the other countries cannot cover. And they have to state clearly where this financing is coming from. So those 3 items are important if you want to include others. Some additional conditions in terms of multiple applications. When it comes to the UK businesses, you can lead 1 and participate in another 2, or you can participate in maximum 3. That's the condition, and then it's unlimited when it comes to research organizations. If you have previous projects with us, if you are nearing the final claim of those Innovate UK projects, then it's important to have submitted your independent accountant's report. That can be a showstopper for this competition. For those that have pending final claims, make sure that you submit your IAR in time for this competition to be allowed, if you like, to participate. But more importantly, when it comes to the award stage, we need to have that clearance from your side. Additional conditions in terms of resubmissions, yes, you can resubmit. If you are not successful, say on this one, you can have another go in any other competition of Innovate UK one time as a resubmission. And then please make sure, especially for those of you that have run projects in the past, our system is developing some memory in terms of looking carefully where businesses have put effort to exploit genuinely or not so genuinely, and then taking that into account for this competition. If we deem that the effort hasn't been substantial in previous, if you like, dealings with us, project-wise, then we may take a decision otherwise for this competition. So make sure you pay attention to that as well. Competition timeline, and this is my final slide, and I'll pass over the baton to my colleagues, is basically, we had the opening, which was last Monday. We had the first public opening in Brussels as part of the Photonics 21 annual event. So I was there to promote the event for the UK. 25th of April, 25th of March, opening. We are running briefing events across the country, London today, and then we have South and North Wales next week, and then concluding just after Easter in Edinburgh. There are 2 deadlines you need to keep in mind, and then my colleagues will explain in detail. So one deadline is the registration at Innovate UK. And basically, this is a registration in order to be able to access the FTP site to upload your documents. That's 1 week before the final submission deadline. So 15th of July is the deadline for registering with us to be able to access the FTP system. And then the final deadline is the 25th of July, as I said. And there's the noon deadline for Innovate UK, but there is also the deadline for the EUREKA. Details will follow next. I think I'll leave it here and then hand over to my colleagues for the details on the process. Thank you very much.
He's a bit taller than I am. Okay, so my name's Lydia. I'm from Innovate, and I am going to take you through the FTP and Innovate application processes before I hand over to Melissa, who will run you through the finance. Okay. So for UK participants, the process includes the EUREKA Network's application form and providing your details directly to Innovate UK. From the Innovate UK webpage, you can click on Search for Funding Opportunities, use the keyword search to find the competition you're interested in, and then click on the title. You will see this page. You have a tabbed view here with summary, eligibility, scope, dates, how to apply, and supporting information. Once you've read all of these and you're happy, please click Register and Apply online. As this competition is not hosted on IFS, you'll be taken to an external screen to enter your details. When you click Submit Details, you'll see this acknowledgement, which will be followed by an email up to 48 hours later. The email contains a username and password for our secure upload facility, along with an application form containing your unique application number. This allows you to log into the site and download all the supplementary information. The first time you log in, you'll be asked to update your password. To submit your documents, click Upload and follow the on-screen instructions. These 6 documents are mandatory, and there are 3 optional appendices. Once you've completed the forms and appendices, please check your naming conventions and your file formats. Okay, so the EUREKA application process. If you search for Photonics on this website, you'll find the call for this competition. You can then download the form, and at the bottom of the page, you can download all the guidance. If you receive this error message, you might need to ask your IT team to update your Adobe Acrobat, or you might have used Google Chrome to open the form, so try it again with Internet Explorer. The project form guidelines are comprehensive, so it's worth taking the time to read them thoroughly. The project form is divided into 4 parts. General information. This is the acronym, duration, cost, countries involved, that sort of thing. Project outline is the description, technology envisioned, and the markets. Main participant, we want the complete contact, address, involvement in the project, things like that. Other participants, all other participants. The green boxes are buttons which will take you to that section of the application form. You need to use these arrows to select your options throughout the form. So, budget and duration. When filling in the application form, applicants should include costs and duration for the implementation phase only. It's not a 2-stage application for funding, so you can leave the definition phase empty. The budget should be given in million euros. The budget indicates the expected cost for the whole project. Duration is completed in months and gives the expected duration that the project needs to finish its research. The EUREKA application form needs to be signed by the legal representatives of all applicants. You can print out and sign a paper version. All signatures must be sent to the national project coordinator of the main participant. Only once all the co-signatures are received is the project able to obtain the EUREKA label. The signature pages can be scanned and sent in a separate document. A collaboration agreement signed by the legal representatives of all participants is also required after grants awarded. Please remember to save the application. Each time you save it, give the document another name, otherwise the file will become too heavy. Completed forms and signature pages need to be sent to this email address. In addition, your completed application form should be uploaded onto the FTP site, which I'm going to go through now. Okay, so please refer to the competition guidance on this. Appendices are mandatory for questions 7 and 8, and they are optional as supporting documents for questions 2, 3, and 5. So, application details. Please make sure your research category is correct, as this is what's used to calculate your grant value. Project summary is highlight the need or challenge, approach and innovation, and the outcomes. This is key to setting the scene for the assessors, as it will give them an overview of your vision. Public description, please be aware of confidentiality with this part. And scope. It's important that your project is within scope to receive funding. Please use this field to justify how your project fits the scope. If you're unsure, you can contact our customer support, as you saw earlier. So I'm going to run you through the questions. So, question 1 is need or challenge. What is the drive and reason for doing this EUREKA project? We want to see there's a genuine need for your idea. So, please describe the main motivation for the project, the business need, technological challenge, or market opportunity. Describe any work you, the UK partners, and or the EUREKA partners have already done to address this need. Have you explained the wider social, economic, and cultural challenges which will be influential in creating the opportunity? Question 2, approach and innovation. What are you doing in your project, and how is this an improvement on what already exists? Indicate where the focus of the innovation will be in the EUREKA project. Application of existing technologies in new areas, development of new tech for existing areas, or a totally disruptive approach. And the freedom you have to operate. Explain how this project fits with your current product, service lines, or offerings, and how it will make you more competitive. Please make sure you focus on the UK part of the consortium. For question 2, you can upload an appendix of diagrams or graphics to demonstrate the innovation. Question 3 is your team and resources. Describe the project team. Explain why you and any UK partners are the right people for the job. Assessors will be looking to see that you have the right skills, experience, and access to facilities. Who's involved in what role and why them? Describe the current relationship between the UK and EUREKA project partners and how this will change as a result of the project. Provide details of any key external parties involved, subcontractors, why are you using them? Are your subcontractors UK-based or abroad? If you're using foreign contractors, you'll need to justify why in this section. If you include participants from other countries, explain why their participation is deemed necessary, what their role will be, and how they will finance their participation. Question 3 also allows for an appendix describing the skills and experience of the main people on the project. Question 4, market awareness. How well do you understand the market you're in or will be operating in? You'll need to detail these markets you'll be targeting in the project to the assessors and any other potential markets. Remember to consider the size, structure, and dynamic of that market. Outcomes and route to market, question 5. What is the impact of your project on your business and consortium? Describe your current position in the market and supply or value chains outlined. Will you be extending or establishing your market position? Describe your target customers and or end users and the value proposition to them. Why would they use it? Why would they buy it? Describe your route to market, including any joined-up exploitation amongst the EUREKA consortium and the relationship between the UK and EUREKA partners. For question 5, you can upload an appendix for support if you wish. Question 6, wider impacts. What impacts will this project have outside of your EUREKA consortium? Identify and, where possible, quantify the economic benefits from the project to those outside the project, customers, others in the supply chain, broader industry, and the UK economy, such as productivity increases. Will there be any expected social, environmental, national, or global impacts, either positive or negative? Question 7 is project management. Assessors are looking to see that you have a well thought out project plan. Outline the main work packages of the EUREKA project as a whole, indicating the relevant research category and lead partner assigned to each and the total cost of each one. Describe what approach your EUREKA collaborators will have to project management. Are they using any methodology? Highlight your approach to managing the most innovative parts of the aspect of the project. Outline the management reporting lines amongst the partners in the EUREKA collaboration. For this question, you must upload a project plan or a Gantt chart in PDF format. Please ensure this is legible for the assessors. Question 8, the risks. Innovation projects are risky, and we expect this. So, identify the key risks and uncertainties of the EUREKA project, including the technical, commercial, managerial, and environmental risks, highlighting the most significant ones. Explain how these risks will be mitigated. You must upload a risk register as an appendix for this question. Question 9, added value. Tell us the difference the public funding from Innovate UK would make to your project. Describe the likely impact of the project on the business of the partners. Tell us why you're not able to wholly fund the project from your own resources or other forms of private sector funding. What would happen if the project was unsuccessful? Question 10, costs and value for money. Assessors are looking to see that your project is reasonable and good value for money. Explain how the partners will finance their contributions to the project. Explain how this project represents value for money for you and the taxpayer. How does it compare to what you would spend your money on otherwise? Justify the balance of costs and grant across the project partners, and justify any subcontractor costs and why they're critical to the project. This is a finance summary table for you. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Melissa, who is going to run you through all the financial information for this project.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So I'm going to take you through the finances. It's worth noting that there is a very detailed project finance guide available online. So everything I'm covering is available for you to refer to at any point during your application process. So as Lydia mentioned, this competition is on our old system, the FTP site, rather than IFS, which therefore means that every business needs to complete a project finance form. And you'll be able to download the template of this from the secure FTP site once you've registered for the competition. So the form has got numerous tabs which you need to complete, and it does take quite some time, so please don't leave it to the last minute. And it's also worth mentioning that assessors will have visibility of your project finance forms. So these are the eligible project cost categories, which I will take you through now. So first up, we've got the labour costs. So here you need to enter the role, gross annual salary, number of staff, and the days spent on the project. If you have multiple people in the same role on the same average salary, then just enter this in the role within the project field. So for example, project manager times 2. If an employee is part-time, then you need to enter their costs as a full-time equivalent. Also adjust the working days per year from default if it is different for your project. Dividends, bonuses, and non-productive time are ineligible costs. Please don't include them within here. And finally, when making grant claims against labour costs, actual costs need to be supported by timesheets. Overheads. So overheads are additional costs and operating expenses incurred directly as a result of the project. And these could include additional costs for administrative staff, general IT, rent, and utilities. So in the form itself, you can choose to have no overheads, or alternatively, you can simply click 20% of labour costs, which is the quickest and easiest option, or alternatively, you can calculate your own overheads. If you go with this route, please note that you will have to provide further information if you're successful during the project setup stage, as all costs need to be verified by our project finance team. So in terms of overheads, we've got indirect and direct. So indirect, please ensure that they are additional and directly attributable to the delivery of the project. And then direct, So again, provide detailed breakdown together with the methodology or basis of apportionment. Material costs. So please enter here and describe the materials that you'll be using on the project, the volume and the cost of those, and they must be project specific. Please provide as much detail as possible when you're listing out what the item is. So for example, just putting consumables doesn't provide enough detail and it will be picked up during the successful stage. Any items that you would usually depreciate as per your company's policy should be listed in capital usage rather than in the material cost section. And any materials supplied by associated companies or subcontracted from other consortium members need to be listed at cost, excluding any profit element or margin. Moving on to capital equipment usage. So here you need to describe how you're using the equipment, whether it's new or existing, the purchase cost, how long you're depreciating it over, and the residual value at the end. So these calculations will need to be in line with your standard accounting practices. Subcontractor costs. So for each project, as George has already mentioned, they must not exceed 20% of total project costs. So in this section, you need to detail any subcontractors that are working on your project. So you need to explain who they are, where the work will be carried out, and a description of their role. If the cost is going to be significant, so you also need to explain in the application form itself as well as in the project finance form. And if you use a parent or sister company, please ensure again that you list it cost. Travel and subsistence. So here you would include things such as any essential meetings that happen during the project. You cannot include any sales or marketing activity as this is ineligible. Travel costs would be expensed at economy travel only. And please be mindful that you might be asked to provide a more detailed breakdown of costs during project setup. And then lastly, we've got other costs. So I would just stress that you look at the project finance guide online to see what sort of costs you can include in this section. It may be things like licensing new technologies, training directly attributable to the project, and just double check that anything you're including here hasn't been listed in any of the other previous categories, so don't do any double counting. And then this is the summary tab. So it's self-populated from everything that you've previously filled in and tell us how your costs are spread throughout the life of your project. So just ensure that your costs are correct and within the eligibility criteria of the competition. So here are the ineligible project costs that you won't be able to claim for. Again, further details of these can be found on our website. And it's worth noting that legal costs of setting up your project, project auditing and accounting costs are not eligible and therefore also can't be claimed. So non-grant claiming EUREKA/UK project partners. So if a UK partner wishes to collaborate but does not want to claim any grant, then they must complete a project finance form to provide a value of their contribution. The partner must be named within the collaboration agreement. However, they won't be named in the grant offer letter if your project is successful. And as previously mentioned, your collaboration can include organisations from countries that are not part of the EUREKA Network in Photonics. However, you need to have ensured that they've secured funding elsewhere, and you describe within your application why and how they will be involved. Moving on to UK academics. So academics in your consortium will need to complete a JES form, which hopefully they are familiar with. So they will need to complete this and upload it to the secure FTP site with the with council status. It also needs to be in a PDF format. If you have any issues with the JES system, this isn't managed by Innovate UK, so please use the contact details on screen there to pick this up with JES help directly. Submitting your application. So as a reminder, this isn't an online competition, it's through the old system. So you need to log in and you'll have your login details once you've registered. And then you need to upload your documents. So because it's the old system, you won't receive an email acknowledgement once you've uploaded your documents. So if you're ever unsure, just log out, log back in, or alternatively call CSS and they can have a look for you. When you're uploading your documents, we only ever take the latest version, so don't feel the need to delete anything. If you amend your application form 6 times, that's fine, we'll just take the latest version. Please, please, please check that you've put everything that is mandatory within the FTP site by the deadline. If any of the mandatory documentation is missing, then you will automatically be ineligible. And as always, any issues or concerns, just get in contact with our competitions help desk. So moving briefly to application assessment. So this competition closes on the 25th of July, and that is at midday. So you need to upload all your documents at this point. And all eligible and in-scope applications will be sent to assessment by up to 5 assessors. Assessors will be basing their assessment on the EUREKA form and also the 10 questions that you've answered. So in parallel to Innovate's application assessment, all other national funding agencies of the participating countries will conduct their own independent assessments. And then we aim to notify applicants by the 13th of September. So in terms of assessments, so our assessors are looking to make sure that your answers are clear, that there's no jargon, and that you provide supporting information where necessary. So really do use those appendices, make sure that they are within the stated page limit, however. Make sure they're there to support your answer, not a continuation of your answer. So make sure you provide the relevant information where necessary, so quantify and justify. And within the application form, please don't provide any hyperlinks or links to websites and such like that, because assessors are advised not to follow through any of these. So all applications that are sent out for assessment will receive feedback. You will be notified of the date that feedback will be available, and it will be uploaded to your secure FTP area where you've uploaded your documents initially. It won't be sent to you via email. And then finally, project setup for successful applicants. So all successful applicants will receive an email notification. That includes, so everyone will be notified via emails, both successful and unsuccessful. And participants will be contracted and funded through their respective member state. As part of project setup, you will undergo eligibility and viability checks. So you need to provide certain information, including your financial forecasts and bank details. And then we've also got the collaboration agreement that you also need to consider. We often see that this holds up projects, so please do think about this in advance, as you cannot submit your first claim without it. And then with regards to grant claims and payments, so they are paid quarterly in arrears, and claims can only be made for costs incurred and paid between the project and start and end date, sorry. So you will be assigned a monitoring officer for your project if you're successful, who will be monitoring your claims. And monitoring will be carried out against a detailed project plan and financial forecast, which you'll also be providing during project setup. So just to reiterate the timeline, so the competition closes on the 25th of July at midday. However, you need to have ensured that you've registered to receive access to the FTP site and your application form by midday on the 15th of July. So you need to upload your documents to the Innovate UK FTP site by midday, and then you also need to ensure that you've submitted your EUREKA project form directly to EUREKA, and that also needs to be uploaded to our Innovate FTP site. And then, as I mentioned, we hope to notify applicants on Friday the 13th of September. And then all countries will have a consensus and selection meeting in October/November. Okay. So that is it. Here is some links to essential information for this competition. So the brief, there is also a very detailed guidance for applicants. You'll notice that the project finance form is in pounds, whereas the costs for the competition are in euros. So on the guidance for applicants, there is a specified exchange rate that you need to use for this competition. So I do really recommend that you familiarise yourself with the guidance for applicants alongside the scope of the competition. And then we've also got the EUREKA website details as well. And then also the supporting information for Innovate UK if you need any guidance. So I think now we have a joint scope and process Q&A, if anyone has any questions.
Okay, thanks very much for that. So we can take questions from the floor, and if you've got one, if you wait for the microphone, so we can pick that up, and Lee-Chen will forward any questions that we've received online. So, any in the room? Yeah, George, could you use the microphone, please, because the web people won't hear.
Go ahead, Dom.
I've got a question. On your slides, George, you said 75,000 to 2 million. Your slide says 750,000. Was it 75?
Can you repeat the question, George, for the microphone?
Repeat the question, yes. So the question was, what's the, I presented an indicative range per project, budget-wise. And the question is, what was the lower end of that window? So the lower end is 75,000 euros. And the upper end is 2 million euros.
Do we have any more in the audience? Any online?
Everything's clear.
Everything's clear. So the talk you've just heard for those on webcast and everyone else will be available on YouTube, so you can go and digest all that at your leisure. I guess I might as well say it, George. Any impact on Brexit on this competition?
So I had that before once I walked into this venue, basically. So this is funding that comes from funding agencies, in this case Innovate UK. There's no implication whatsoever related to Brexit. So yeah, there's no risk whatsoever.
EUREKA is a membership organisation, and the UK, you're stealing some of my presentation now, but the UK is a partner, is a member of that network. So that's why Brexit isn't affected. It's a member regardless, and it's international. So Canada's a member, also support this, and South Korea. So it is way beyond. There's 40 countries, so it's way beyond just the EU.
Any questions from the webcast?
No, seems to go presented.
There's one over there, George.
Which one?
Hi, just some sort of clarity in terms of collaboration. Does the collaboration necessarily have to be within the scope that is set out by Innovate? In the sense, what I'm asking is, if the scope is outside of the European setting, what do they have to produce to Innovate for us to upload it to you to show that they're part of what we're trying to achieve?
So let me see if I get this right. So you plan to have a consortium, let's say an international consortium in place, and the question is whether can you reiterate the question?
So basically, if the scope is coming from outside of, i.e., outside of America, does that scope, what is it exactly do they have to produce for us to upload to you to show that their financial background and stuff?
So this is a question on other country participation. So if you go beyond the 7 countries, the first thing is to be part of an existing consortium. So organizations from those countries will be developing their own consortia, right? And then you may be invited as another country to be part of that consortium. Now, there are specific conditions. You can participate. So the answer is yes, you can participate, but there are specific conditions. One is that you're not receiving funding from this competition. You have to self-fund your participation, one. Second, the proposal, which means you and the consortium pretty much have to justify the need for you to be involved. So what's the need? What's the genuine need that you cover and the other countries, and it's not covered by the other countries, pretty much. And the other one is that we need to see evidence that where this financing is coming from. Not only that you have it, prima facie, if you like, but we need to see the evidence that it's coming from somewhere and this is the direction and it's secured pretty much.
Can I also stress, if it is funding from elsewhere, it has to be in the same time frame as the call. So it has to match the time scale of the call. It can't be 6 or 7 months later you're getting the funding. It's got to be within that same time frame.
Is it clear? It's good.
We got one online question.
Yeah.
The question is, if the company is a very new startup with no finances, but with the capability to develop the consortium around the company's design, can the company still be able to participate or lead the application?
Shall I? So they can participate as a startup if you like. The requirement for us, Innovate UK, is that they need to be registered with Companies House at the point of award. So that's the requirement.
But if the company have no finance, no its own money at hand, they only have is technology and the capability to build a consortium.
No, there needs to be, I mean, apart from the expertise, they can be fit in terms of expertise, but because the way that when the project will be run within Innovate UK, we are paying in arrears, as it was mentioned. So they have to fund their effort first per quarter and then claim the costs from Innovate UK. So they need to show that financial soundness, if you like, how they're going to cover those costs as they deliver the work per quarter. So that will be questioned, if you like, by the finance team at some point.
Can I just follow on the same from what the gentleman is saying? If the startup company can show they are coming into a market to disrupt that market with the technology that they're coming in with, and they can show some form of funding to kickstart their project, are you saying they can come back to Innovate after showing such and reclaim that back as it's paying in arrears?
Yes, what I'm saying is that the way that we deliver the funding is that you do the work for a quarter, if you like, and then you submit your claims and you get reimbursed. And the reimbursement rate depends, or the funding rate depends on the size of the company, the type of the company, and the type of the research you do. So there's a matrix, and that determines, yes. For a startup, I don't know, I mean, I can't quote off the top of my head, can be 80%, let's say, hypothetically, right? So you claim your costs, and you get X% out of those costs. But what I'm saying is that as a startup, without any financial, if you like, and again, based on that question, without any financial background, how are you going to cover those costs as you do the work? So if you don't have that evidence, it'd be hard to justify your participation. That's what I'm saying. And this will be specifically, the finance team pays attention to that early on in the project setup.
The costs in the project have to be incurred and defrayed before you can claim them back.
So
By quarter.
By quarter.
Yes, Simon calling from TWI. Just on the dates quickly, because you talked about a consensus meeting.
Yes.
I thought I understood the dates, or I understand when we've got to get the application in. But in terms of getting a decision about whether we're successful, is it applied to Innovate, and then you have to go and discuss with the other countries involved in the consortium bids?
So thanks for the question. So the way it works is Innovate UK will run its own national assessment, if you like. The same will happen in the other countries involved. And then we convene jointly between October and November to reach a consensus. So basically, countries will have different ranked lists, if you like, as a result of those national assessments. And the exercise for us, quite challenging, will be to come up with a joint list agreed by all the countries involved. So
It's not about creating a ranking, it's about us coming up with a list that we can come up with a consensus with the other countries.
So it's a quick follow-up on that. So when do we expect to be notified, sort of end of November, December time?
we can't commit on that, unfortunately. That's why I've put it as month, if you like, and not date. I can't possibly commit on a date on that. But we are planning to have that selection meeting at the back end of October, early November, and then once this, once we reach that consensus, you will be notified soon after that.
Thanks.
Okay. Just a point from me, if I may, before closing the session, helping you simplify, as a frame, how you should think about this competition. One is the EUREKA dimension, which is basically a separate template, as you saw. And the other dimension is the national, which is our template, Innovate UK. And the reason we have that is because the EUREKA template, once you go, you'll see what I mean, is a very light one. So it requires top-level information about the participants, some things about the technology, but it doesn't go into the detail. So we need more information on the national side to convince ourselves through the assessment that we are spending taxpayers' money wisely. So that's why we have this national dimension, which pretty much is, for those of you familiar with national domestic Innovate UK projects, it's pretty much the Q1, Q10, slightly modified to capture the EUREKA dimension. So the EUREKA template, and it works on its own, if you like, with the participants, and the Innovate UK template.
Can I stress you have to submit both? If you can't just submit the national one, because otherwise it would be ineligible.
Both.
You have to submit both.
That's a good point, Jane. And when assessors will, sit down on the UK front and do the assessment, they're going to have side by side the EUREKA application form and the Innovate UK application form, right? And then the scores per question will be given, basically taking into account both templates.
Sorry, we need the microphone. It was over.
Hi there, just a quick question from me, from Robert Cooper from TWI. So what do the consortium partners from other countries have to submit? So we've got the EUREKA application form, Innovate UK form for UK, but if we're partnering with, say, a French company, do they submit an equivalent sort of application form to the Innovate?
So the common, if you like, action is the submission of the EUREKA form on the EUREKA, when you email that to the EUREKA Secretariat, right? That's the common thing. That is where it stops, because all the countries have their different national processes. So we have the FTP. The Germans, as an example, may have their own portal. The French, similar. So what you need to think about is only the FTP system, nothing else. All the other partners will follow their own processes nationally.
Are they both for 25th of July, both templates, the deadline to submit?
Yes, there's a slight delay on those two deadlines. So the deadline for uploading your documents on the FTP is the midday of the 25th, okay? And so that's the Innovate UK national front. And then for uploading the EUREKA or sending it by email, the EUREKA template is the end of day of the 25th of July. So 23:59 Central European Time, which is 22:59 UK time, pretty much. Yeah.
Sorry, just a follow-up question on the ranking. So say if the UK partners submit the application form to the UK, it scores very highly, but the other consortium members in different countries score very poorly on their side, on their internal application form. Is that the consensus meeting when you go to sort of fight for the project? How does that work? So?
Precisely. Yes, the discussion will be around priorities, different countries, different priorities. I mentioned before about the two dimensions, processes and products, right? So yes, it will take into account the quality and then the priorities of the countries and the available budget, pretty much. And then the effort is to converge on a single list of projects that will be recommended for funding.
As I said, it's not about ranking and saying this is rank one, it's about the countries coming into agreement. So our evaluation will be able to evidence the projects and why we've given that score. So then it's about the consensus meeting and about agreeing that.
And just to stress again, because of that, if you like, the variety of priorities, which is a healthy thing to have in a collaboration, I do encourage you to get in touch with us. Ultimately, through the customer support services, will loop through me. And then the idea is to get the scope right before you start working. From the UK point of view, we are more open, if you like, in terms of both processes and products, as I mentioned before. Some other countries may have different priorities, so it's important to get in touch with us early.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll leave the Q&A there. Just to reiterate there, so this will be on YouTube, and everyone here will get the slides after, and everyone on webcast, and so there'll be all the contact details. So you'll be able to ask more questions as you perhaps process the information and go through. So the final part of the session before we say goodbye to people on webcast and we go and have a coffee is you get me back, and I'm talking a little bit more about finding international partners. And George mentioned Photonics 21 earlier on, the public-private partnership. And I'll just be giving a very brief overview of Photonics 21 and European Photonics strategy. Okay, the first part, finding partners. So just run through again, we've seen them before, the participating countries, Austria, France, Germany, Israel, Poland, Switzerland, and the UK. Now, it's worth noting that all of these countries have got something like a National Photonics Association. So in Austria, Photonics Austria, France, maybe about a year ago, merged two Photonics associations to form Photonics France. Germany, there's a number of organisations fulfil that function. Israel has the Israeli Photonics Association, Poland Photonics Technology Platform, Swiss Photonics in Switzerland. And in the UK, and here's an abbreviation test for you. So the KTN, the Knowledge Transfer Network, serves as the National Photonics Platform in a number of circumstances. We work very closely with the UK Photonics Leadership Group, is the second one in representing the UK as a whole. And in the nations and regions of the UK, there are other trade bodies and associations. So we have the Scottish Optoelectronics Association, the Welsh Optoelectronics Forum, and the Torbay High Tech Forum, and various of those. And so KTN, we can basically help with this process because we have contact with all the national and local photonics associations. So if you're looking for to make contact with a specific company or organisation in one of these countries, or you would just like to sort of make yourself known on that, we can help you sort of put you in touch via our colleagues in those national photonics associations. As George already mentioned earlier on, we're fortunate in having a dedicated matching service set up for this call. So you can go on the B2 Match site and you can upload your profile and search for profiles of other organisations. So that would be a useful thing to do because you'll get your profile out there and see who else is participating. If you haven't already, it's worth making contact with the Enterprise Europe Network. So the Enterprise Europe Network is very broad. It's over 600 partner organisations in 60 countries, actually beyond Europe. So the Enterprise Europe Network can circulate profiles and can help you find international partners, and they can also offer innovation support for your business more generally. So the Enterprise Europe Network. There will be a point of contact, so it's run slightly differently in Scotland to the rest of the UK, and it's run regionally in the UK. There's a contact detail on there, but basically my contact details will be at the end. If you get in touch with me, I'll put you in touch with your local Enterprise Europe Network contact, and they can take that forward with you. And of course, so the role of the Knowledge Transfer Network in this project. So we're all about connecting people. We're a network partner of Innovate UK, and we connect particularly cross-sector. So we have a wide network. So if you're a photonics company looking to get involved in a manufacturing company, or even, for example, an agri-food company and take manufacturing in there, or if you're from the end-use sector and you're looking to make touch with a photonics company, we can support you in that. And we run a number of events and from sort of round table type things to large scale events. So there's lots of opportunities to find partners for this call and others in the UK and beyond. So come and see us as well. Okay, so in the second sort of part of this talk, I just wanted to give a very brief run through of Photonics 21. So it's a nice busy slide, but it gives a bit of information, so I can just do a bit of talking over it. Photonics 21 is a European technology platform for photonics and is a public-private partnership. And what that means is that European industry has committed to more than matching the European Commission's investment in photonics. So Photonics 21 as an organisation is very democratic. As a public-private partnership, it's got sort of best in class for this. And the slide shows here that there are a number of work groups within Photonics 21. So they go in sort of application and technology sectors, information and communication, industrial manufacturing, life science and health, and so on, and security, metrology and sensors. It's moving as well to the addition of 2 new work groups in automotive and agri-food. Now, these work groups are open for everyone to join. You just go on the Photonics 21 website and register and join a group, and I'll explain why you might want to do that in a bit, but they're absolutely open to all. The board of stakeholders is the decision-making part for Photonics 21, and again, that is open to election. They have elections, and you can get involved in that. So the board of stakeholders, just to show it's sort of representative, the UK has a presence on that, and so it's you know, we have a say in that and continue to have a say in Photonics 21. So one of the reasons why this is particularly relevant, sort of back in 2014, Photonics 21 consulted with industry and research base across Europe and produced a strategic roadmap going out to 2020. And that was basically showing where the investments were needed in photonics for European industry going out to 2020. And through a sort of a regular cycle process, the Photonics 21 work groups selected the priorities for where innovation investment was needed. And through a sort of a process, these were recommended to the Commission, and because the public-private partnership had a dedicated budget for photonics, these emerged into calls, competitions for funding. So by participating in the work groups, it's possible to sort of not only find more information, but directly influence the calls. So Horizon 2020 has got, it's still got a couple of years to run. It's still running, and if you didn't get the message, UK can absolutely continue to participate in Horizon 2020 with the government underwrite. But going forward, you'll be aware there's Horizon Europe is the successor to Horizon 2020, and so Photonics 21 has spent the last year consulting on the priorities for Horizon Europe. And I know what's interesting to me about this is that if you see the challenges here, it very much mirrors, if you've been following the UK's industrial strategy and the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund, this whole focus on challenge-led innovation. And so you've got some familiar themes about the diagnosis of disease and manufacturing and the terabit economy. It's all about communications. So this is formed now into a new strategic roadmap, Europe's Age of Light, which was handed over just last week to the European Commission at the Photonics 21 annual meeting. I think I'm at the back somewhere if you want to play Where's Wally in that photograph. So just a brief run through there. So you can find European projects, European partners in a number of ways. I'm going to leave my contact details hanging there for those on webcast. Those in the room can obviously catch me over coffee. I'd strongly encourage you to go on KTN's website and you can register your interest. So you can select sort of electronic sense and photonics, would be a fairly obvious one, and other ones you're interested in. And you can find out more about competitions, events, and we can support you. You can also go on the KTN website and find my details. So I think in the interest of time and letting everyone get caffeined up, those on webcast, I'll happily take any questions if you want to email me afterwards or find me through the KTN site, and those in the room can catch me at coffee. So I'll end the session there, and thank you very much. And we'll see you in about 20 minutes' time for case studies. We'll have the pictures, and we'll have an overview of the EUREKA programme. Thank you.